going on. We want to thank our presenting sponsors. We're really excited. Yay, team! And we have some more coming on board. And so that's just been an amazing thing for us. I'm Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, with my sidekick and brilliant mind, the nonprofit nerd. And we are thrilled to have Chandler Longbonds on today. She's the CEO of Social Leap, and I love the name of your company because for some of us, it is a leap to go.
Yes, absolutely.
It's really, really powerful. So Chandler, we're thrilled that you're here. Today, we want you to take us into the world of LinkedIn. And Jarrett and I have been having this conversation quite a bit on air and off air. We're really concerned that our nonprofit sector is changing in such a way that it's impacting HR. And we feel like there are going to be a lot of people looking for jobs or changing jobs. Maybe, as Jarrett said, they don't want to go back to the old environment that they were in. And so LinkedIn is really that social platform that is really going to be probably a great asset for connecting people in a professional capacity for jobs changing. And so we thought, man, we need to get an expert in here to talk about what this looks like. So we drafted you, and we are thrilled that you are going to join us. So you've got several tips, and so we're going to put you on the hot seat. What is tip number one?
Absolutely. Yeah. So just to add a little bit more, LinkedIn is one of my favorite platforms for nonprofits and individuals. I think it's a great mix of both, being able to promote your nonprofit, but also promote yourself. It's a really great self-promotional tool. So all of these tips are going to kind of walk through some of the ways where you can promote both yourself and your nonprofit on LinkedIn. So my first tip is to use content to tell your story. So probably the biggest question that I get from businesses or individuals is, what should I be posting on social media? So, that can really vary from person to person, but ultimately what we're trying to do on social media is to provide our followers with value. So, I'm sure we've all seen those social media accounts where you're scrolling through and the whole timeline is just, donate, buy here, click this link, learn more. They're constantly working in a self-promotional way. And oftentimes we kind of have to think outside of the box that social media is just a promotional tool and kind of think of how we can drive our mission and our values through the content that we post. Mm-hmm. So again, rather than looking at it like a promotional tool, think of the ways that you can kind of go beyond and look at, give us a look at what people don't see from the outside. That's the type of content that people are going to be more inclined to engage with. Maybe it's, giving us a quick overview of one of your employees and why they were drawn to the nonprofit, what their contributions are, what their role is. Maybe it's a video with a volunteer saying why they were drawn to your cause. So really kind of think of the unconventional ways where you can use content to go more from a purpose of sharing a mission and values, rather than creating those promotional posts. So the times that you do have those promotional posts, people are just going to be more inclined because you're going to have that active and engaged base already there interacting with your content.
I love that. I love that. And I think that's a great way to frame the whole thing, because I suspect as we go forward, it's going to give you, it's all building blocks, right? It's not a one-shot thing. Okay, so I'm loving this so far. So let's go to, if I can get it is a Monday.
Well, and I just want to say too, I love LinkedIn. It has by far become my top platform. And when I say that, for me as a professional consultant, that is where I'm going to, one, find my best sales pipeline, find my best referrals, by working with other professional consultants that may not do exactly what I do, but I always want to know, who is out there in the nonprofit sector that I can also work with, collaborate with, or refer to. So many good things about LinkedIn. And I do agree, Julia, we have had this conversation about how the environment in the nonprofit sector will change. And a lot of people, I've even noticed more and more use on LinkedIn. Now, it could be that, personally, we are so burnt out with the political post and controversial, post on other platforms. And I always find that LinkedIn is a little bit more of a reprieve, that it has stayed very professional. Mind you, those other topics do come in because they're relevant and they're timely and they have to deal with, our work environment as well. But there's a lot less of what I would say emotional post and more about the professional post.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree. Okay, so you've got tip number 2.
Awesome. So the second tip is mainly for nonprofits who, they're trying to build their presence on LinkedIn. And this is something that probably a lot of us have come across, whether you're from a marketing standpoint or PR, but, trying to grow in the social media environment, your company pages, is pretty difficult right now. Organic discovery is at an all-time low. So we're constantly battling all of these platforms' algorithms that are saying, personal content is more important than business page content. They're kind of decentivizing that, unless you throw ad money at them, of course. So one of the ways to kind of combat that is to leverage your executive team. So many of us are probably familiar with the concept of thought leadership. And, obviously a thought leader being someone who's, well respected within their industry, who kind of has a voice. They're the kind of person where when a research study comes out, a report, a news article, you can go to their page and that they're already going to have, a comment and their opinion on that issue. So really trying to position your executives as a thought leader within your industry is a great tool, because, it extends beyond that company page, but you can also use their social media strategy to drive traffic back to your own your own company page through tagging, through using hashtags. So as I mentioned, organic discovery is really difficult. So you're going to have success leveraging a personal page. Chances are they probably have a large network on LinkedIn already. So really tapping into that is a great way to drive people back to your page. Typically, in my experience, start with your CEO, decide if you want to expand that out to other C-suite level executives. But in my personal opinion, I've worked with clients, managing both a company page and their CEO's page. And I found that we would often get more interaction on the CEO's page. And that was a big part of our strategy and growing the followers back to the company page. So really think about how you can use that to work in tandem with your strategy.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think that's, and think about it. I mean, if you're navigating through the relationships, you're going to get like-minded, like-leveled, if you will, C-suite people. So yeah, I think that's super smart. Good advice. Okay, so oh my gosh, tip number 3. What does that look like for working LinkedIn?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that I think comes across more for nonprofits that I've worked with, and it's to create targeted campaigns. And why I think it's really important for nonprofits is because my experience, there's always that certain time of the year that we have more marketing priorities, whether it's tied to a specific busy donation time or an awareness month. But there's always that certain time of year where we really want to ramp up our marketing activities, and planning ahead and creating those campaigns ahead of time is going to save you a lot of trouble and also result in a lot more success. So, maybe you're a nonprofit and your busiest donation time is Christmas time. So plan ahead, start organizing all of the assets, start with the message and the action you want your audience to take, and then build the content around that. Blogs, articles, social media content, visuals, those will all fall in place, and then kind of determine where you want to send those people. Are you sending them to a landing page where they can, donate, learn more? Determine all of that, set your baseline analytics, set those metrics, and then sit back and evaluate. One of the biggest pieces too of creating any campaign is, coming up with your distribution strategy. So as I mentioned in the last tip, your C-suite level executives are going to be your biggest allies in helping get that content out there, but your employees and your colleagues can be a big part of that too. Determine when you're going to be posting and how you're going to have people share that content, interact with that content. So putting those assets together using an editorial calendar is my favorite way to stay on top of things like that. Is going to be a big part of, making sure your campaigns are successful and that you're not, treating those busy times of the year as, standard posting time.
Yeah, I think that's smart because you get so overwhelmed with everything that you have to do. And then it's like, oh yeah, we need to be doing this. And then it's kind of, you know, yeah, half approached. So
Yeah, and those analytics can be important too because we can use LinkedIn's native analytics for any company page, and it'll kind of give you an idea of what you can expect on a day-to-day basis as far as your growth, your interaction and engagement. So setting those goals and using the analytics to track, I think will be a big part of then evaluating what you're going to do the following year and so forth.
awesome. Jarrett, you had a comment?
Did. I wanted to know, so I completely understand using the CEO's page in addition to the company's page or the nonprofits page, if you will. But how do you recommend that we engage the other executive team, the rest of the C-suite, in addition to, even directors and managers there beyond? How do we engage them in posting and tagging back to the organization without them feeling pressured that is a requirement per their job? So how do you navigate that?
Yeah, that's definitely varies case to case. And that's a really good question because, I've been in certain situations where I'm working with a company and their CEO is already extremely active on LinkedIn. And it's not, a very large ask to get them to engage with the company page a bit more. But then you also have certain companies where, maybe the C-suite team isn't the most social media inclined. So you kind of have to help a little bit or even bring in an outside consultant. In some cases, I think a little how-to document is really helpful, just kind of giving them the basics of, how to construct a LinkedIn post, how to go in and share, sharing even maybe the editorial calendar with them for busy posting times so that they know, okay, 11 a.m., this post is going out. I can dedicate 10 minutes on my calendar to remind myself to go on and share that. So the easiest that you can make it for them, I find that the more success you'll have, just because their days are really busy. And, if you give them the tools and make it as easy as possible, I think they'll be more inclined to take the time to do so.
I say that too. I spoon feed the board of directors, right?
Yes.
Possible, and the same for your C-suites. Make it as easy as possible for them to do something, and that's what I always, when I do my executive coaching with, anyone that works with a board, I always say your job is to make their job easier. So
Absolutely, yes.
Are you adverse to actually calendarizing this, like where you might do, I know the editorial calendar process, but actually putting it into an actionable calendar, reminder type of thing, or do you think that's going overboard?
I think it's appropriate for, extremely important releases. If you're, a company where you have an extremely important product launch, or you're releasing a study or something that's, the once to 3 times a year kind of big announcements, I would definitely factor that in just because you want that extra lift.
Okay, cool. All right, wow. So tip number 4, what does that look like?
Yeah, so this is going to touch on something that seems a little bit scary at first, and that's to experiment with advertising. So there's kind of this misconception out there that LinkedIn advertising or just social media advertising in general is expensive. People aren't super comfortable with like a pay to play sort of model just because they think, I might not get any results. I'm going to spend all this money. Am I really going to get more sales? And my response to that is that you don't need a huge budget. And of all of the different social media platforms, LinkedIn is my favorite one to advertise on just because it is so targeted. There's a ton of different forms of advertising you can take advantage on. So number one, start with your goal. If it's page growth, if it's, exposure to a certain post, maybe you just want to promote that one post where you were tagged in a news article. Maybe you want to drive traffic to that landing page from your targeted campaign we just talked about. So start with your goal, and then, we can start looking into some of the different technical advertising capabilities LinkedIn has. It's really incredible. I mean, you can literally target people who have been on your website. People, if you have a prospect list, you can upload that prospect list to LinkedIn, target people by company, job title, location. You can really get super granular on the LinkedIn targeting campaigns. And what's nice about that is that, you're spending money on advertising, but you know for certainty that every single dollar is going towards your ideal audience and isn't reaching anybody kind of beyond that circle. So I encourage you to just start with a small budget, start with your goal and see how your results are panning out. Just to share an anecdote from a recent campaign that I ran with a client. So we had a post out there that was, a big news announcement, and we wanted to just sponsor the post for $50. So they sent me their prospect clients. It was a list of probably 70 companies, and I uploaded that to LinkedIn, targeted all of the VP level executives and above. And for $50, we got over 30,000 impressions. And we know for a certain fact that everyone who saw that ad is someone that they would be, inclined to pitch their services to. So, it's really incredible what you can get out of a small budget on LinkedIn. And I'm not saying that that's going to result in the CEO of one of these companies picking up the phone and calling tomorrow and saying, I'm ready to get on board. But it's just one step further down that funnel, which is ultimately leading to an action.
Wow, that's great. So many people, and this, Chandler, so many of us are tied to in the nonprofit sector, tied to the event space and event action. Do you think that this is something that should be used for events as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, as long as you have that goal in mind, if you can send people to a page where they can learn more about the event or get tickets, the geographical targeting too is a big part of that. So you can target people that are close to the area. Certainly all of us have that prospect list of people who we want to, get to attend the event as well. So I would definitely try it out. Set a small budget. And I think everyone's going to be surprised just how positive the results are.
Awesome. That's really cool. Okay, go ahead.
You pull down your LinkedIn connections, and then you can use their emails, I think, to do a targeted list on Facebook. So I've taken the time for my own LinkedIn profile to make sure that it truly is nonprofit centric connections, because when I first started LinkedIn, it really was, so many of my friends, family, college alum that aren't in the nonprofit sector. And so it was kind of another social platform where we were connecting, but on a professional level. But truly, unless they serve on a board, or unless, for me, they're civically engaged in their community, they may not be, dare I say, like worth keeping on a LinkedIn connection, because when I pulled that list, it's now more, mixed of social and professional, as opposed to truly being a sales pipeline. So
yeah. I think that's a question I'm going to ask you to reflect more on, after tip 5, because it's who do you accept, how do you build that engagement? So tip 5.
Awesome. So the last tip here is something that we can take advantage on our personal LinkedIn pages, and that's to start joining LinkedIn groups and start being active in LinkedIn groups. So like I mentioned, you don't need just your company page to start getting involved and being active on LinkedIn. You can tap into the executives page, but you can also start with your own page. So beginning to get active on LinkedIn groups and starting to post content is great to start driving traffic and building those connections, as you mentioned, within your own community. So because, as nonprofits, we're so driven by a specific cause or a specific topic, we're able to find those groups online that share that same interest and start joining those as well. So like I mentioned, it's a great networking tool, but it's also a great recruiting tool if you're looking for people to join your team too. It's kind of that guerrilla, non-conventional way of getting started marketing yourself, because you can start posting the content that we discussed on tip 1, which is content that shares your story, content that's not overly self-promotional. And I think you'll find that people, are wanting to be engaged, especially if it's a group where people are sharing, what works for them, how they recruit, how they donate, how they fundraise. So yeah, get started on there, start posting that similar type of content. Ultimately, what we are trying to do on social media from a marketing perspective is just driving awareness and reinforcing our brand. So if we can start driving that awareness, that's going to lead to people taking an action. but social media should really be thought of as, you know, an educational tool. People are coming to us on social media to learn more about what we do as a company, and them being able to see that we're active and we have a voice in the community is going to be really impactful.
Right. I think that's important. Hey, let me ask you a couple different questions. I'd love to know what you think about like frequency. How often should we be doing this? Do you have, and I know this is like the crystal ball, but do you have like it's better to do this on, before noon or on, a Wednesday
Yeah.
versus a Tuesday? What are your kind of general thoughts?
So it's interesting because LinkedIn's kind of peak times are kind of what you would think for like lunch break or just getting out of work. So it's usually Monday through Friday,
Okay.
peaks around noon, and then it's active again after 7. So people are using LinkedIn throughout the day, but they're using it most outside of working hours. So except for the weekends, of course. But yeah, and then as far as, getting started with frequency, I would say if you're not a very active LinkedIn user right now, start with a couple times of the week so that you can kind of dip your toe in. If you're already posting maybe 2 times a week, try to ramp that up and set a goal of maybe every weekday. And I wouldn't go beyond that, just so you're not, inundating your followers' timelines with your posts. You don't want to get unfollowed or anything like that. But, I would say at the most, maybe once per day on weekdays is what I would recommend.
Great.
Okay. And what do you feel about like how engaged should you be on other people's links? I mean, how critical is it for you to be not only liking somebody's post, but then commenting on it or,
Yeah, I think
responding?
it's extremely important. What we're trying to do is get that same level of engagement on our posts. So if we put it out there, I think people are going to be more willing to sort of reciprocate that engagement. And, building those conversations and taking, what other people are saying and incorporating that into your own post, you may find that you'll likewise get those comments or reactions.
Mm-hmm. Jarrett, how much time do you spend on LinkedIn every day? Do you know?
I do surges on LinkedIn, kind of like I do with everything else, but I am much more intentional on LinkedIn than any other platform where I find Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, right? Like that's more of the dark hole. Those are the places I go if I am like committed to just scrolling for some like mind numbing activity, right? LinkedIn, I am purposely looking for solutions. I'm looking for resources. I'm looking for a connection. So to be honest, I am probably on LinkedIn at bare minimum, I would say at least like 20 minutes a day. And that is just kind of me taking a look. What are some of those top headlines? What are some thought leaders in my sector posting, saying, doing? And then in addition to that, right, like than the normal 20 minutes, is me really looking for, okay, am I looking for a match for a nonprofit board member? Because I get that a lot, right? Where people say, I really want to be involved, especially now. So much civic engagement has been sparked. And they'll say, I really want to serve on a board. Who do you know that's looking for a board member? So that takes me down a different rabbit hole, but I always find that my time on LinkedIn is more intentional. So what about you, Julia? How often are you on LinkedIn?
Oh, next question.
Look at that, technology issues. Oh, you've been great. You've been on it quite a bit.
I can do better. And Chandler, you've inspired me. I can do better. We can do better. It's hard to believe, but our time is like coming to an end. But I have one more question. Chandler, do you think that it is important to start pages for different events or different actions that you might have? So for example, let's say you're a nonprofit in the Midwest and you have like a back to school drive in the late summer, and then you have like a holiday event or call to action because it's year-end giving. And then let's say you do an Easter thing. You've got different time periods, you've got different things going on. Do you think it's a good idea to actually start pages or accounts just on those actions, or just fold them into your general page?
That's a great question. Yeah, there's something on LinkedIn called showcase pages, which kind of allows you to splinter your traffic a little bit. But
Okay.
overall, I wouldn't recommend creating multiple pages. Typically, I would say just use your one LinkedIn page and simply mention all of those other things. And instead of referring people to different LinkedIn pages, just maybe send them to different landing pages or different destinations on your website. And the main reason for that is just because we don't want to split up our traffic. It's so hard to get followers as it is in an organic way that we would hate to have some people following one page but not the other, or asking them to follow all three. So I would recommend keep it to one LinkedIn page and then just split people off as far as, where you send them to take a specific action or register for the event.
Okay, and then one last minute question, and this kind of tailors or dovetails to what Jarrett said, and that is, how thoughtful should you be in taking on all these invitations? I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, Jarrett, I can only imagine, but with the show, I get people from, all over the planet wanting to join in, and a lot of them, they're affiliated with an NGO, like if they're, outside the US or whatever. What are your thoughts on that? Like
Yeah.
how much should you, if you will, research the people that are asking you to join in?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question now, especially because I'm sure as people have seen, within the last year, especially LinkedIn has kind of fallen to a bit of, sort of like bot traffic, and you kind of get those like spammy requests, or someone's,
Yeah.
simply trying to add you so they can send you a long sales message as soon as you hit accept. So I think that's a really fair question right now too. As Jared mentioned, there's some really great targeting tools you can do if you have a well-organized group of connections. You can download those emails and retarget them. So I would try to keep your followers list pretty cleaned up. People within your industry, I would say are valuable to have as connections because they might further engage on your posts, both as an individual and as a company if you're sharing your company's pages, or excuse me, posts. So yeah, keep it targeted, I would say, to your industry. Do a little bit of research. I wouldn't go beyond a couple of minutes of looking at someone's profile, but if you have mutual connections, if they're in a similar field, I'd say it's worth adding them.
Cool. Wow. Well,
Though I'm going to spend some time doing some cleanup.
yeah, I think so too.
When did LinkedIn start? I mean, it's been several years now, so 10 plus maybe years. I think for LinkedIn, I don't know when it started, but that's what I'm thinking, Julia, is I'm going to spend some time dedicated, as Sasha would say, Sasha Lewis, for, that commute time in your CRM. LinkedIn essentially is a type of CRM for me, I should say. I'm going to take a look and see how many of those childhood friends do I not need to be connected to on LinkedIn.
I think you're right. I think it's a good investment. Chandler Longbones, wow, you've really given us some good things to think about. I love having you on a Monday because it kind of gets me like reset and refocused for the week. And so, I'll make a commitment to doing a better job and being more intentional. I really liked a lot of the things that you said. And I say that we get you back on for maybe some other platforms because certainly we looked at this in terms of how is our industry changing during this time? We think there's going to be a lot of employment shift, and this is the place to get your name out, protect yourself, and project yourself at the same time. So, wow, this is Chandler's information, social leap, and I think with somebody like Chandler, it's not such a leap to get involved. I'm Julia Patrick. I've been joined with my co-host, Jarrett Ransom. Thank you, Ms. Jarrett. It's been great. Thank you to our sponsors. We're thrilled that you're on board and we have more coming on with us. And this has been the Nonprofit Show. So stay well so you can do well. And we're going to see you tomorrow. This week's Action Packed. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.